Welcome to Positive Philter with your host, Philip Wilkerson, a podcast that focuses on friends, family, health, and career, with a little self-help along the way. Please join me in this journey for self-improvement, and I hope what I have to share will make you a better person, thus making the world a better place. I hope you enjoy the show. I hope you enjoy the show. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's Philip Wilkerson back with another episode of Positive Philter. I'm joined by a special guest. Well, everyone's a special guest because they took their time to be on my show. I'm joined by Lillian So. Now, sometimes, like always on my podcast, it could be the first time I met people. And this is that same instance, but we've been in communication. I've seen the things that she's doing on social media, and, she connected and we're vibing, and this is going to be a great episode. Just knowing her background, I'm going to give her a little brief introduction, but I'm just going to start off and say that she has coined herself as a facilitator of transformation, meaning she, in just different ways, helps people transform their lives. And we're going to get into what that means, that facilitation, and that cool title. I might copy that from my LinkedIn title. But before we get started, Lillian, can you give the listeners a little bit of an introduction of who you are?
Yeah, so my name is Lillian So. I am a daughter of Korean immigrant parents, and I was born and raised in Chicago. So I moved out to San Francisco. I live in San Francisco today, and I moved out here from Chicago in 2007. And I've been here ever since. And I started my career in fitness. And so you called me a facilitator of transformation. And so I started my career in fitness, and like, how does one even become that, right? What does that even mean? So I'll just give a quick background on that. I started my career in fitness, which was really about helping people transform their bodies. And so that's why I always say, like, I consider myself a facilitator of transformation, because like, what do you want to transform? Like, you want to transform your mind, you want to transform your body, you want to transform your heart, you want to transform your relationships. Like, I got you. So I started my career in fitness and pretty much had a lot of success with that. And after a couple of rounds of burnout, I, basically got really, really interested in working on myself. And I didn't even really know what that meant at the time, but I just had this inkling after some burnout and after being in a relationship that, where I really felt like I lost myself. I was like, man, I feel like I need to just work on myself. Don't know what that means, but I went down that rabbit hole. And not only did I start going on a personal healing journey, but I also started shifting even the things that I was doing professionally as well. So I became a yoga therapist. I went to yoga school, got certified and trained kind of through all of the levels of yoga, and became a yoga therapist. And along that journey, gained a mentor in nonviolent communication. So started learning communication work, became a facilitator of communication. And from there, really started becoming a real coach in terms of helping people move through their emotions and helping people draw the truth out of themselves. And ultimately from there, just got into a bunch of other rabbit holes of woo and magic, tied it all together. And now I integrate it all and help my clients move through their stuff and transform whatever it is that they want in their lives, through all of those modalities that I've picked up and how I've learned how they connect together. So we go deep. Yeah.
I think that's great. And, obviously, seeing that you're a Renaissance woman of well-being, so many different pockets to well-being, right? Mental, spiritual, physical. How do you, in regards to your growth, how do you know which pocket to really dive in and become an expert in? Because, from what I could see, you're really tackling a lot of different issues for people, but you could go down and just focus on the body or just focus on being like a spiritual healer. How do you balance, especially particularly you, how do you balance your learning and development of those skills to help other people and balance those?
Yeah, see, so I think for me, rather than looking at it as like compartments, throughout the course of my studies and my training and my career and all these things, to me, it's like, what makes sense to me is that everything is connected all the time. Like, that is what makes sense to me the most. Like, that's how I see everything. It's like, no, like, that's the thing. Like, your body is your mind. your mind is your feelings. It is your energy. It is your bliss. It is your magic and your power. They all just kind of go together. So for me, I really see everything as like connected. So when someone is struggling with something, or even if I'm struggling with something, I always look at everything that's happening. I pay attention to how my body is feeling. I pay attention to what I've been eating. I try to look back and think like, okay, who did I interact with? All right, how's my energy been? How's my sleep been? Okay, like who did I bump into today? I try to kind of take inventory of everything as much as possible. And then from there, I can be like, oh yeah, then that thing happened. Oh, and I bet that created a ripple effect. And oh, I can see how that's connected. So that's just kind of how I think about everything in general. So when you say like, how do I like know like which lane to go? I think my lane is, well, everything is connected. So why don't we just look at everything? And then from there, we'll get some clarity of what threads might be really where we need to go in and kind of do a little bit of surgery, or a little bit of healing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. So I would say, let's say a new person for you. I'm a new client of yours.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have some kind of intake? And in regards to that intake, are you just asking a bunch of different questions, like those things, like, tell me about some close friends of yours and your relationships, or tell me, what hurts, and all those different
Mm-hmm.
things. How do you kind of like get that starting point to help people, to help them start their transformation or healing, as you said?
Yeah, so there's a couple ways. So one of the ways, if someone, this is just very like tactical and like literal, right? So if someone finds me, a lot of times if like you find me through the internet, you may have found me through a training or a webinar that I have. And in this training and webinar, I take you through my 5-pillar method. And so people have an opportunity to assess themselves while doing this training. And so people, before they even come to me, they can assess themselves, right? So this training, like you can take this, you can watch this training if you'd like as well. And you go through my 5 pillars, and my 5 pillars to my personal unique method for transformation includes your biology, adjusting your biology, 2, your programming, which is your what's up here in your head.
Yeah.
3, your inner compass, which is like your self-worth, your self-love, your heart space, the thing that calls you and pulls you, right? So we have biology, we have programming, we have inner compass, and then we have communication. Okay, so like, how are you at setting boundaries? Do you know how to like empathetically listen and compassionately communicate and lead with love? And are you connected to your own personal power and ability to be able to manifest and draw in what you really want? So when you take this training, when you watch this training, you can kind of self-assess yourself, because I walk through everything and talk about symptoms and etc. So sometimes people will come in already and just be like, hey, that training really resonated with me. I'm totally an overthinker. I, have really bad communication. I'm always fighting with my husband. Like, they'll kind of name these things themselves, and then we can unpack it in the call, in the session. Now, if you didn't come in that way and you're just coming cold off the street, then at that point I would just be like, I keep it open floor. Like, I don't really follow like a script per se or anything like that, because everyone is so uniquely different. And literally there's, to me, like, and no 2 people are alike at all. Like, everyone is so uniquely, nuancey, intricately their own person. So I kind of start like in a very general open format way of like, so what's going on? Like, what motivated you to get on this call? Like, how are you feeling? Like, what's coming up for you? Like, what was the thing that made you be like, I want to book a call with Lillian? And then we just kind of start there. And then from there, I can usually feel and sense where we need to unpack a little bit more. It almost feels like a little bump, like a little road bump. And it's like, wait, hold up, back it up. Tell me more about that. And then we'll unpack that a little bit. And then from there, I get to kind of start to diagnose, so to speak, like, okay, so like, this is what I think is the major things that are coming up. Now, don't get it twisted. When you come in to work with me, you'll probably end up finding 10 other things that you didn't even know that you wanted to unpack. But for right now, here's what's coming up. And I think this is where we need to really, give you some proper attention and some tools and some mentorship, and some accountability and support, so that you can really start to move through these areas. And so in that sense, it would be like, okay, like, I can see like we need to do some mindset work here, right? Like, we need to do some serious like self-love work here. Like, you ain't even drinking water when you first wake up in the morning. Like, can we talk about breakfast? Like, you need to eat breakfast, and so and then from this kind of conversation of finding these little roadblocks and these little bottlenecks, just even within that hour conversation, I can already start to see like, okay, like I know what's coming up for this person right now, and we can just kind of start here, and then we'll like let everything else just unravel as it's supposed to along the journey.
Now, one of the things that popped in my head is how do you deal with, and we kind of talked about this, how do you deal with the skepticism of, people not really buying into, you know, I guess we're so westernized, right? Like, it's very, feelings and all that stuff seems very foreign or not, just not culturally the way
Totally.
Americans think, right?
I was actually going to say some people even think talking about feelings is woo, even though feelings is like a literal, like biological, like physiological, like body response.
Yeah, 100%. I totally agree. Like anger, heart rates goes up. I mean, we all know that, but like, yeah, like I would be like very interested because, I think you're practicing a lot of global worldview points of view of health. Other cultures, I believe more about, different, the mindfulness, and it just doesn't seem like that is very ingrained in even Americanized or Westernized view. So how do you really just address some of that, that cultural skepticism, especially with the topics that, you're bringing up, and just getting that buy-in from people, I guess for your
Yeah, no,
variety.
no, that's a great question. That's a great question because I think you're right. Like there is a lot of resistance. There is a lot of resistance. So two things. One, I try my best and I'm continuing to learn how to just talk about these things and educate people on these things and normalize these things, just even through the content that I put out, the things that I post about, the things that I share. And so just making it more normal and just making it be like, nah, man, like, no, like this is actually a thing. This is why you feel burned out. Like, this is why you feel anxious. Like you actually haven't been in touch with your feelings in like ever. Did you know that might actually be the reason why you're feeling X, Y, and Z? And just putting that out there and just talking about that. And so normalizing that, sharing about it, etc. So I just start there as far as, okay, let's just start with that like kind of educational, like beginnings and trying to talk about that around anybody that's interested or willing to listen. And then from there, I'm very discerning about who I work with. So I actually am very, 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 what's the word? Uh, Very meticulous and very thoughtful and very mindful, and maybe even low-key obsessive about, who I work with, because anybody that I work with is coming into my community. And my community is the reason why my clients get such epic and amazing results. So by me choosing who I work with, I am also choosing how I am building the safe space and the safe container. I have these containers for transformation because if you really want to transform yourself in a big way, like step one is safe container. Like you need a safe container. So this is why we go to therapy, because therapy is a safe container, right? Like you feel safe in there. It might just be a one-on-one container, but it's a safe container. And so you feel like you can go in there and talk about some things you've never talked about before with anyone. Well, in that same way, that's what I create too. Like I create a container for myself and the people that I work with. And then these people are also coming into my community containers. It's like a whole thing. So for me, I'm extremely discerning about who I work with. So if you were like kind of resistant and skeptical and whatnot, anyways, I wouldn't even work with you anyways. So when you say like, how do I deal with that? It's like, I don't, I don't end up actually like working with those folks because they wouldn't, it like, they probably wouldn't want to work with me. And if I feel like I have to like pry and force, because I've done that. That's the thing. I've tried doing that. And it's an uphill battle. It's like, why would I try to like force that? Like, why would I and it's like, why would I try to exert this energy in trying to like convince someone that this is what they need, right? It's like, I just want that frictionless like, I'm not saying like I want it to be easy. I'm just saying like we need as little friction as possible, because the more you trust the process, it's a wrap. The more you trust the process, you're off to the moon when you work with me. And that's just how it is, because of that, because of just like the magic and the intention and everything that goes behind it. And so, yeah, so as far as, how do I kind of like discern and get past that, I actually try to really be choosy about who I actually work with now, because it wasn't always like that, and it caused me a lot of pain.
Yeah, I was about to say, I mean, as an educator, I don't think I get a choice. Like, like I work in higher ed, so obviously who I see is who I see. But I think, I guess for entrepreneurs, that's one of the things I was thinking about. But you got to eat too and make money. But I think what I'm hearing is that you hold fast to certain values, and you realize, like, beyond the paycheck for yourself, like, yeah, if this doesn't work for me, I'm not going to be chasing the dollars, because eventually, if I do the things and stay to my values, people will be attracted to me to work with me. Is that what, am I hearing that correctly?
Absolutely. Absolutely, Philip. I appreciate you for hearing all of that
Yeah, I
and all
tried.
that ramble.
Yeah, I tried to. I'm working on my listening. So one of the things too that's really stand out, you really spoke to, and you already said it off, leading first with a little bit of identities, is that you said I'm a Korean, Korean descent. Um, and we talked about this too. I think that, and I definitely want to talk about this. For me, as the Black male, there's just been always this stigma about well-being and the woo-woo. And over time, I realized that this well-being techniques for me is two things. One is a form of resistance, right? Like, I deserve to be happy. I think a lot of when we think well-being is like afforded to the privilege and
Mhm.
white. I'll
Mm,
be quite honest. And
absolutely.
and what I realized over time is that, black, that the hashtag Black Boy Joy, is that in my pursuit of being a well person, that's almost like my, like, middle finger to the oppressor to say I'm going to be fulfilled and happy. And so that's one. And then two, I also realized that, like, the stigma, like, while it is corny sometimes, that, like, it's okay. Like, I do things that I put my boys on. Like, I'm like, oh guys, this is great. Y'all should journal or do these things, or we should do a vision. I've done a vision board with my boys, and they're like, yo, you are tripping. But over time, is like, I think that we get the buy-in. So I want you to speak to that. Like, how has your Korean ancestry been either something that's, brought you into this kind of space, this well-being space, or how has it been, like, kind of in conflict with
Oh
that,
my
with
gosh.
the work you do?
I can totally relate to you, because let's talk about mental health. So I would do it in that context. There's a huge stigma around mental health and getting mental health help in the Asian communities. Koreans have the highest suicide in the world. Koreans have the highest suicide rate in the world.
Mhm.
And Korean Americans have the highest suicide rate of all minorities, out of all minority groups. In California, for sure. I'm not really sure about the rest of the country, but
Mhm.
it's a thing. It's a
Yes.
really big deal. So part of my passion around what I do is changing the narrative and the trajectory of how we view doing this work and taking care of ourselves. And I love what you said about it's like a middle finger to the, it's like, yes, I agree with you on that, like on so many levels. Cause it's like, no, 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 no. Like, I'm going to take care of myself. I'm going to learn how to love myself. And because that's what it takes to
Mhm.
elevate and get to the top and, and be the best version of myself. I'm not going to stay down because I don't, because like somehow I'm going to give into this narrative that taking care of myself is corny
Yeah.
or weak, you know? And that's not it. So yes, I hear you on that. There's a huge mental health stigma. It's I know for me personally, there's a lot of what I've learned and what I've observed and what I've grown up on is, that we don't ask for help.
Mhm.
We're tough. We hold everything in, we bottle it in, and we just sacrifice, and we just suffer in silence, and we just do the thing. And but that's a slow death. That's like, I'm not gonna do that to myself. So one of my main reasons for also wanting to do this, one of my passions is very much trying to change the trajectory, influence, normalize this idea of doing the work and taking care of yourself and having hard conversations and addressing feelings and shame and guilt and making that like normal and like part of a lifestyle for Asian Americans, for Korean Americans, and all of that. So yes, that is completely woven into the bigger vision and purpose behind what I do. Like,
How about, similar I said about, just the people in your life and your circle, and getting the buy-in and them seeing that the woo-woo stuff that you're doing
yeah.
makes sense. Do you have any stories about that? Like telling someone like I'm doing this and this, and they're like, what? But then maybe bring it to a positive where over time they kind of started doing it. Like for instance, like my boys now have 5-minute journals because I bought them 5-minute journals and
Yes.
taught them about gratitude and stuff like that. But they just saw that it was just, kind of like putting other people on it. Do you have a similar story for yourself?
Yeah, for sure. So actually, I have very distinct memories of being told by who I actually, considered a best friend, tell me that because I would share, I'm a very open book. And, when I first started going to therapy years ago, we're talking like over a decade ago, I remember it was like a big deal for me. Like I was proud of it and I liked talking about it and I thought it was really great. And I was really excited to talk to somebody about it and talk about it. And I remember like, I was hyped about it. Like I would like, because I love learning about like why I do things and why we do things and the mind and all that, and I remember my best friend, like after sharing a bunch of things, like one time we were getting off the phone and he was like, all right, cool. Hey, by the way, man, like, don't waste all your money on therapy. And he kind of said it to me like as if like I was like playing myself or like that I was like wasting my money or that I was like, not spending my like basically like wasting my money.
Mm-hmm.
And that like stuck with me. That stuck with me like that's still like I'm like wow, I still think about that. I don't like hold on to it. Like I'm not like mad at it, but I just remember like just being like, wow, like that, like for real. And I think that is a testament to like how there's this stigma and that like somehow it's like woo or like unnecessary. And I think my little brother was a little bit like about it at first, but he has now over the years really, really seen the weight, the gravity of what I do. And his wife actually is inside of one of my containers, and she's been working with me for several months now. And she, my brother's like, wow, like I'm amazed. He's like, thank you. He's like, he's like, I see the changes in Darren. Like I see it, it's like amazing. Um, and he had his first therapy session not too long ago. And so it's, I would say like that was a very long period of time, from that initial of like, you don't need to do all this. You don't need to like, are you sure? Are you sure you need to do all this? To like now, rippling into his wife being inside of my programs, doing the work, like him going to his first therapy session. Like, I just think it's wonderful, but that was not necessarily supported, over a decade ago, even by, like who I considered a best friend. And even like my own little brother was kind of like, Lily, are you getting sucked into some shit? Like, are you getting sucked in right now? That kind of attitude. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I found that very interesting because, like, that's the same thing. Me and my closest friend, who's been on the podcast, Hillard, just on the surface, strong Black Jamaican male. You never would have thought, but we both went through a counseling master's program, and I mean, just from where we are in high school to now, we're very feelings and like he'll make fun of me 1 minute and like talk about my shape up, but then we'll have very deep conversations saying like he's very proud of me, I love you, and we get off the phone and all that stuff. But I don't think we would have been like that unless we both found, I guess, trusted that process over time, and then really found that like the 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 benefits of well-being and realizing that it's not corny. And I
Mm.
think that I'm really fortunate that I went through that kind of education process with my best friend. We went through the master's program together,
That's so cute.
randomly. But
Randomly? Oh,
well, not randomly. We went, and then I was like, "Yo, you need to go to George Mason like me and get a master's in counseling." He was like, and he was like, "All right, bet." And then he did, and then he graduated one semester behind me. That's it.
oh my God.
So, and I definitely credit that to transforming our relationship, as we were always best friends, we were always brothers, but like literally now we added another layer where we are very vulnerable with each other.
Yes.
But I say that to say that I think that is very interesting, that I don't think a lot of people put in that work. And I think it's very, very scary. One of the things I would say is very scary about that is that it it really takes a lot of effort to combat societal norms and societal standards and contradictions to what we view as traditional well-being,
Totally.
to what you're doing, and I guess obviously why I'm having people on the podcast.
Right.
So with that being said, what would you say to someone just to get them started on this journey of transformation? Like either whether that was yourself in a time machine or someone like they're still going to be resistant, but just to at least take that first step to making their life better, especially making their life better in a non-traditional way that you're kind of doing with your work.
Yeah. So like what would I kind of start with for someone as
Yeah,
far as
just like you say, yo, give it a try. Like what would you like say to someone and say, just give this a try, or this is a first step, no guarantees or no hook in you, but just try this. What would you say to someone like that?
that's a great question. Let me see. What would I say to just try?
Mhm.
I would tell them to try one of my fitness classes.
You'd work it in through this fitness. Okay, that's great.
Yeah, and here's why. And I don't even say that to like plug myself, but the reason why I said that was because I didn't want to like spend like the next 10 minutes thinking about this and like actually contemplating, because like that, I could do that too, but this isn't even a plug. This is why, because when all of my so I have four programs. I have four fitness yoga programs. I have a lot of different things that I do under my belt, right? And I also have four signature fitness programs. But in my fitness program, what's nice about my fitness programs is that it's a nice, easy, low-hanging fruit doorway. You
Mhm.
can come in and just be like, it's just a yoga class. It's just
Mhm.
a cardio class. It's just a dance class, right? And so you're just like, you just come in and you work out, but then you come in and all of a sudden I'm like, so here's the deal. There's a lot of intention in this. And today we're going to do So Fierce, because this class is, yes, a cardio class, and you're going to work really hard and sweat and burn all the calories and get fit and strong. But also, the whole point of this class, the meaning behind this class, is about you tapping into your power and you tapping into a side of you that's fearless and willing to go after anything, because that's what fierce people do. So when you're in this class, not only are you going to get a workout and it looks like kickboxing and athletic training and it looks like just like a regular workout class, but all of a sudden there's like more intention behind it. It's like, well, Lillian created this class because she wanted you to tap into a feeling of fierceness. And so you start to like kind of think a little bit more layered and a little more holistically, and it feels like it's like, the whole idea is not only are you working inside of your physical body now, but now you're putting more meaning behind what you're actually doing through your movements. And then a lot of times what I'll also do is I'll ask for some kind of reflection, either before or afterwards, right? So it's like, okay, how did you feel? Like, what was that like? Like, what do you think you would be capable of if you could tap into that fierceness every day after this class is over? And so it kind of gets you to start thinking differently and beyond just like, oh, I'm just doing a workout. And so it just kind of is like this easy entry point to thinking things a little bit more deeply and a little bit more thoughtfully and a little bit more multi-layered versus it just being just a workout, right? Just like a mindless going through the motions workout.
I like that. Actually, I was thinking about that. That's a great strategy because, technically, even in career development, the presenting problem might be their career, right? Like they want a job, but then you peel back some layers and you learn that they got other things going on. But they would be very lenient to say, I just want to come in and get my resume reviewed. You're talking about your resume, but then while you're working on their resume, you're asking them some other questions like, yo, how what do you think about what do you think about, what do you want to do for the rest of your career, just from a resume review, and before you know it, they're just spilling the gate. So I definitely agree with like coming at people from a different lane. So I think one of the other questions I have for you is that I'm very interested. This is kind of a random question, but do you think that a lot of the work you're doing, you're in a perfect lane in San Francisco? And the only reason why I say that is like, I got fam out there in San Francisco. One of my uncles lives out there. And I've been out there. The vibe of people being a little bit more open to this kind of work in San Francisco is a lot different than maybe the hustle and bustle of Chicago or DC or whatever. So what are your thoughts on that? Like, is that what motivated you to move to San Francisco? Was a little bit of the energy and the vibe of that area?
No, not at all, actually. That's what's wild. So when I actually first moved out to San Francisco, I actually didn't really know what it was like energetically. I just knew that it was more urban, and it was, that it was like a very I just knew that it was like a unique city. That's like all I really knew.
It's unique and expensive. I'll tell you that. Like, I know that for sure.
Exactly. I'm like, how do I say this? I'm like, I just knew that it was like a unique city, but I didn't really know how or why. And I was actually I always wanted to live in San Francisco. Okay. But when I would talk to people, people would be like, oh my gosh, like, why do you want to move to LA, or why do you want to move to San Diego? Or like, they would say things like that because they knew me, and they knew California better than me. So a couple people that I knew would say like, you might want to check out San Francisco if you're trying to move out to California. It's like, I think it might be a little bit more up your lane. Again, I didn't really know what that meant. And I came out. Yeah. So
I just meet you just now. I mean, like, legit, like, geographically, you got the vibe of someone that would live in San Francisco, and not in a negative, stereotypical, mean way. I'm just saying, like, there's definitely a certain energy. Like, I'm a military brat. I really don't feel like I'm a DC person. Like, right. I would never live in New York City. It's too busy. I'm too soft. I'll tell you that right now. I'm telling all my listeners, I'm too soft for New York. I do like the South, but I don't know. But there's cities like that. Like San Fran is a cool place. I love visiting. I love Denver. I love San Fran. I love Austin, Texas, randomly. But there's something about a special energy. I think California in general, but then also San Francisco has a special energy. And I just wondered if that was playing into you doing this, like, especially with this language and all that. I definitely feel like that'd be very receptive in California, period, as opposed to other regions.
Exactly. I actually, like, when I first moved out to San Francisco, there was a part of me that was like, man, I should have moved to New York instead. Because I'm originally from Chicago, and like, what you were saying about New York, I'm like, oh, I always, for a moment, I had this like, what if, like, man, how would things be different if I moved to New York, when I was 25 or whatever. And I had a little bit of that FOMO for a while. And then I let it go, and I completely surrendered to this process and realized, I was supposed to 100,000% supposed to be here. Like all along from the jump, because like, this is like actually the stuff I'm really into. But I didn't know it. I had no idea. So in many ways, being here opened up kind of like an energetic portal field for me too. And I just got into a lot of interesting things. But I will say this. I wouldn't say that all of my clients are necessarily in San Francisco. So I actually do have clients all over. And I would say, though, with that said, we got a strong Seattle fam. We got a bunch of folks in Seattle. We got folks in Portland. We got folks all up and down the West Coast. So I do think there is definitely a bit of like a West Coast vibe that's a little different, a little more open to the woo, a little bit more open to the feels. There's definitely a little more of that. And then I also, got folks, all in between as well. And then I got folks East Coast as well, right? So I would say like we're up and down California, we're up and down the West Coast, California, up and down to Seattle, Portland, California, down to San Diego, LA. And then we got the other coast as well. So we got like Boston, New York, and that's kind of where we're at. And then we've got a couple folks in Chicago in terms of like how I would kind of
Yeah.
say that our like community, like our vibe shows up.
I love it.
So yeah.
How has this parallelogram, aka this pandemic, how does it affect one, the work, or just you in general, your well-being, but also just your connecting with the community during this time?
The pandemic's actually been really great for me, to be
Okay.
honest.
Yeah. All right.
It's actually really been great.
Going.
And here's why. Two things. One, it's helped me slow down
Okay.
so much.
You need to teach me how to do that because I ain't slowing down. I've actually gotten faster or more busy during this pandemic, but go ahead. I love that.
Yeah, I've slowed down and I've also sped up at the same
Okay.
time. But
Uh-huh.
here's what I mean. I was literally on the road all the time before the
Mhm.
pandemic. Like I was literally like in my car, I would hustle, I would see clients. I was
Mhm.
I was just doing a lot more like on my feet.
Mhm.
And so with the pandemic, it actually gave me the space and the opportunity for me to shift everything online and to just truly, truly pour more energy into building the community. And because of that, it's been amazing for the work as well, because now I'm able to serve clients literally all over the world. Like I'm able to actually have clients in Europe and Asia and the States, and like be able to bring us together and have meaningful connections and do meaningful work and do incredible transformational things and witness each other like on these crazy trajectories. Like, I mean, I have literally clients right now that I have not ever met in person. I've only worked with them online, and
Mhm.
like their lives are changing,
Mhm.
and these are folks that I may not have been able to work with or didn't have the bandwidth to work with pre-COVID. So not only has it really helped me to kind of like slow down my lifestyle and not be running around all the time, which has totally, improved my sleep. It's improved, like bodily functions and things like that. And it's also really allowed me to, be able to serve just more people all over and build community during a time where we feel so isolated and disconnected and feel like our life has been turned upside down. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like I've had a lot of clients who
Mhm.
were really dealing with a lot of grief
Yep.
last year
Yep.
a lot of a grief from suddenly feeling like everything got pulled on, the rug got pulled out from underneath them, like people literally getting sick and passing. And yeah, like, I mean, a lot of my clients, like there was a lot of grief. It was a
Yep.
hard year last year.
I mean, we're still in it, I think, but
Yeah,
obviously,
absolutely.
I think, yeah, it's. I totally agree what you're saying. Like, slow and fast. Like, one is maybe travel's different, but I think I'm just as busy or busier
Yeah,
as an educator because now my work is brought home to me now. Like 'cause
exactly.
I'm doing it at home and stuff, but it also has really made me reevaluate. Uh, the priorities of things. And I told you earlier about taking breaks on my podcast as I need it and all those things. I think the pandemic expedited or made that faster process. Like, you can't be recording every night now that you're at home during a pandemic. So I agree with that. I
Yeah.
think one of the things I am very curious is for you, is there anything new you're trying? So I shared with you that I did my first vision board.
Hmm.
And I'm really working on visualization. That's going to be my new thing for 2021.
Okay.
It's really, I've always been a good goal setter, write down things. As I told you earlier, I started journaling, but this year, like as I said, I'm the mad scientist of well-being. I just try new things, and so I was like, you know what? I'm going to give vision board a try. Vision boarding and really working on tapping into visualization and picturing the things that I want and then making it happen.
Mm.
But I'm very curious, is there any new thing that you're going to try for yourself that you're trying, one to try for yourself to ideally pass on to people you work with? Is there anything that you're going to try and experiment on yourself this year or recently, period?
Yeah, good question. Let's see. Is there anything that I am doing in particular this year? Okay, so like the first thing that's in front of me is like, I always refresh my like affirmations and sticky notes and things like that around me. So I have like a new set. I have a new set of affirmations and sticky notes. And I was just joking with my clients yesterday on a coaching call of like, I don't have, like as much as I'm into all the woo, I actually like sticky notes, like this is it, like this is my magic stick right here. Like I just got sticky notes everywhere. And so I refreshed all of those and kind of pushing the boundaries around like really making like bigger, bolder statements. And so I would say like the thing that I'm trying that's new in that sense is I'm really trying to push myself to like be more bold, not even big. I wouldn't even say it's like, oh, I'm trying to think big. It's like being more bold about what I want to claim and what I want to create and what I want to accomplish this year. And not like in a goal kind of way, but like in a like boldness, like I'm going to own this and I want to step into this and I'm going to like step into this challenging thing and say this like grandiose thing about myself, so like being more bold, I would say, is like a huge, like a big shift that I'm feeling for this year. And beyond that, the new thing. Okay, so the new thing that I'm doing this year is it's like work, but I'm actually seeing it as a everything that I do, even with my work, in many ways, is an opportunity for me to like grow personally and to like grow my own understanding of myself. And I'm sure you can relate to, because you were talking about getting a master's in counseling and like things like that, right? So I'm actually writing 2 books this year. So yes, there you go. I'm like, what a different.
Yeah, that's different.
And I'm like, oh, that's different. Yes.
It's a new skill. It's a new, it's a new creative endeavor. So writing a book is something new. How about in this process of writing a book, what was the apprehension? Like for me, I've been writing a lot more, writing articles and submitting is always had this negative narrative, like I'm not a good writer. And then I realized like, well, I don't have to be the best writer. I'm really good at talking. I can get someone to edit, like writing, the content is what like I'm good at content. I've never been scared about that, but I realize now even the best writers have a editor. And so it's not a matter of like, I've always thought like great writers don't make grammatical mistakes or have typos and all that. No, great writers are very good at finding their voice. And then they got a team to do the editing and all that stuff. So, I mean, I'm still working on that. That's one of my things for this year. But what's been some of your early challenges when you said you're going to write a book? What are some thoughts that have gone into your mind or been apprehensions about that process?
Yeah, no, that's great, because I've actually already started to talk about these things and sharing along my process and journey. One of the things that I actually did not expect to come up, one of the things that has come up that has created procrastination and resistance in my process was the voice in my head that said, "This is too basic. You're not going to sound smart enough. This isn't going to be deep enough. This isn't going to be profound enough. Okay, this is too foundational. Your clients are going to be disappointed." Like basically putting the pressure on myself that I have to create this masterpiece of like intelligence and like magic, right?
Yeah, no, it makes sense. Like you have to write like the Bible. It's well researched,
Yes, exactly.
Like you gotta write, like I thought about that. That's definitely something I'll share with you, offline. I wrote an article for a national publication about mentorship, and I thought like the whole time I was like, yo, I have to have like 10 cited sources, and it's got to be like very scientific. And then I submitted it and it was like, no, it wasn't really, you didn't need to cite everything. It wasn't crazy. But we do, like I said, we put this standard on, especially written word, that it's got to be, way more profound or sophisticated. And what I realized, and I even challenge you right now to realize like, we're basically a book is just another voice, right? You do the podcast as a voice, you do a blog as a voice. A book is the same thing. It's just, it's longer and more pages. And it's edited, so that's one of my ways to hopefully that can help combat those voices. But I definitely understand. I'm glad you shared that, because that is, I think, a lot of people, when they think about creating a book or anything, they think that it has to be the the next thing since sliced bread.
Yeah,
But
totally.
honestly, it could just be something you wanted to share anyway.
Exactly.
At bare minimum, something you wanted to share in written form, and you got an audience, you got a lane. Someone's gonna buy it. They're gonna
Totally.
buy it straight up just because it's yours, uh, and then hopefully you can,
Yeah.
find more audience. But I definitely encourage that. I think that's a great idea.
I actually really love what you said too about like how, writing a book is just another voice. And that's exactly it. And speaking of vision boards, that is actually one of the things that's in this top corner of my vision board as well. And the word is voice.
Yeah.
And and one of my primary intentions when I put that on my vision board was that like I am really going to actually put that at the forefront, right? It isn't something that I've actually ever said like, oh, this is a thing and I want to find it. And then, because it's just never, it just hasn't been a thing, right? It wasn't like, so we're talking about like what's new for this year. And so, yeah. And so part of me writing the books is part of this exercise for me in, okay, what does it actually look like for me to purposely spend time with my voice? And I'm like, oh, that's what happens. These thoughts come up. Oh, like, it's like, oh, this is hard.
Yeah, it is. Yes, it's very hard. I think that's great, and I think that I think I definitely, anyone listening in regards to this, I think one of the things I always encourage anyone when they ask me about starting something, whether it's a podcast or a blog, is one, like I think you already said it, like everyone always puts this expectation that it's got to be the life-changing thing. And I was like, nah, honestly, it should just be something you want to talk about anyway or share anyway, and using your voice, because I'll be totally transparent and honest. This is not the only well-being podcast out.
Right.
Surprise.
Yeah.
Your book is probably not going to be the only book about positive thinking, whatever your topic is. It's not the only one. But what is unique is that it says written by you, podcast co-hosted by me. Like, you're the unique aspect of this creation.
Right.
Your voice is the voice in that. So, I mean, honestly, you still want to back it up and sound good or whatever. But then I think overall, don't get over fixated that you got to be remarkable to get started.
Exactly.
I think that's great. I'm very excited for your journey.
I think
go ahead.
Oh no, I was going to say, I was like, it is definitely an exercise in immediate and imperfect action, which is something that I teach my clients all the time.
Can you say that whole line again? I love that.
Yeah. So it's an exercise for me in immediate and imperfect action, which is something that I teach my clients all the time.
All right. That's my life. I live in chaos. I was always just action first and figure it out as I go along.
Yep, exactly.
I think that was always my superpower, whether that's impulsivity or whatever. I just I'll do and figure it out.
Exactly.
And the people are like, yo, how'd you do that? And I'm like, I don't know. I just did it. And then, it wasn't pretty, but I tried. So exactly. I love that imperfect action. I love that.
Yeah, exactly.
So we're at the part of the show I like to call shot for shot. Like, obviously we're not taking real shots, but you get to ask me anything related to whatever we talked about or not. And I get to ask you anything. Do you want to go first? Or I go first.
Yeah, well, I would love to know. Tell me more about, what it is that you do in education.
All right. So I work as a career industry advisor at George Mason University in Fairfax, Virginia. Now, industry advisor is a fancy word to say I am a career counselor, but I have a specific niche. So my niche is media, arts, design, sports and rec, and hospitality and tourism. Cool. Meaning I work with students that are interested in entering those lanes, and also I work with employers to make sure that they're, posting jobs and internships. Obviously I didn't come from that industry. I really focused on being a career counselor, but it was a position that was open. So I had to learn the industry lingo and all that stuff. But I've always, at very baseline, always had a background in helping people, especially students. So I figured that out. And I've been doing it for about 3 years, which is really well.
I mean, it sounds like a really fun industry that you're helping.
Oh yeah, I got the good one. I remember.
I mean, like that sounds hella fun.
Yeah. I mean, it fueled my podcast. I ain't gonna lie. I took ideas from the students I worked with. They've taught me way more. I mean, like, as I said, I work with media arts design. So I worked with film students and they'd be like, yo, we got to do this. I'm like, what's that software you need to know how to do? Like, they've helped me so much, and stayed in touch with them. They've been, especially the students that are really, there's certain students that I become unofficial mentors to, mentees
I love
to
it.
me, and I've seen them go out in the world and do crazy stuff, like actually working in Hollywood and all that stuff. I'm like, you remember your boy Phil, right? Um, and so, yeah, that's funny because I do remember when I first started, they said, okay, Philip, you got the job is yours as an industry advisor. You either have what we call the creative industries, which is media arts design, or you have tech and engineering. And I said, creative industries, please. Like, I don't know, something called me about it. I just started podcasting when I got this job, so it kind of overlapped. And so, yeah, I am very happy that this is the industry that I got. And it's got me an opportunity because not only like I don't work specifically with majors. I work with any student. Like, you could be an English student, say, Philip, I'm an English student, but I want to be a journalist. They work with me because that's the industry.
I like that.
But regardless of industry, I also still need to understand the departments. So I've really gotten to work very closely with the film school at Mason, or work really closely with the communications. So I do work with some majors, and those schools are so dope to work with. Like, I get to work with
Exactly.
like the film majors at Mason, or the film department, are my biggest advocates. They're so cool to work with. So yeah, I will say this, like, in regards to gratitude, if I go back in a time machine, I'm so glad this industry was meant for me as opposed to other industries. I
Oh yeah.
will say, though, one of the challenges with mine is that no one, like, I'm in DC, so no one really thinks of us as a very artsy area. So,
Mm,
the arts is a little bit of a struggle. I mean, there's a few theaters here and there, or film, right? Like, everyone thinks you got to leave to go to the big Apple, or LA or Atlanta for film.
right.
So that's been a little bit of a challenge. But I will say, because of COVID, I've been really working with students and getting them connected virtually, and they're starting their careers in a remote space.
Oh,
And
that's great.
they don't have to focus like, well, because I'm in Fairfax, this industry is not for me. Because when you think of DC, what do you think of when you think of DC?
I mean, politics.
Yeah, yeah. So that, a lot of the kids are going into that lane, government, politics, very tech. This area is very tech and engineering heavy with all
Right.
of the DC contractors.
Mhm.
But uh, I still would not replace this. I love my lane. I love my industry.
Love it. It sounds really fun. I'm actually really happy for you. That's awesome.
Yeah. And you might see some of my students out there in the West Coast someday. Like,
Right?
they're
Exactly.
moving. They're getting out of here.
That's
All right.
great.
So my question for you, this is totally random. Obviously, your work has taken you some different places. What are been some fun places, not just where you travel, but places that I think your work before the pandemic, that your work has brought you to, that, because it was connected to your profession, that you got to see this place. So where has your work taken you, in the world or in America, uh, that's fun
Yeah.
or cool?
Where has my work taken me? A couple places. Um, I would say, I would say, so right before it was sad because we were supposed to go again last year, but I was actually able to take my work to Seoul, Korea,
Oh,
a
nice.
couple years ago. Yeah, so I actually created an opportunity to take a group of my own clients on what we call the SoFit adventure at that time. SoFit is kind of like the name of like my company, right? So I do retreats and adventures now. So retreats are like when you go in and you do more like what you think of like a retreat, right? Doing yoga and talking about your feelings and meditating and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
But I did my very first adventure with a group of clients in Korea, in Seoul, Korea, and it was dope. It was so fun and amazing, and it was dope. Like, it was a literal adventure. Like, we like did everything. We like wrote the cabs, rode the buses and rode the subways, and like went and got face readings, and ate barbecue at what, before we went to the club, and then like did the
Yeah.
karaoke thing and got butt naked and got scrubbed at 1 a.m. and the saunas, the bathhouses. I mean, it was amazing. So that is, and we were supposed to do it again. We were supposed to do it again last year in 2020, and we obviously didn't get a chance to do that. But yes, that is the most recent epic, amazing thing that my work has, been able to help me experience and take me to somewhere far, far away.
Okay, I lied. I mean, this is still part of the shot for shot, but I'm very curious. Was this one of the first times you've been to Seoul, Korea, or this was one of the ones where you did it through work? And then two, um, wow, that's crazy. Was there a reason why you picked, was because of your Korean ancestry, you wanted to go back to Korea, or why'd you, those two questions for that?
Yeah. So it was not my first time. So it was not my first time in Seoul. So I went and took a group of my clients so that they could experience like the best of like a curated experience that I created, right? It's like, okay, like if you are coming to Seoul for the first time, like this is where you'll get a little history. This is where you're going to get like the best bombest food. Like you got to get this experience because this is just so Korean, and stuff like that. So, and I speak the language. So, when you go to a place like Seoul, Korea, it's nice to have somebody that speaks the language, or anywhere where it's, I mean, like it would be like if I was going to go to Vietnam, like I have Amy take me because she's Vietnamese and she speaks the language, So, so I speak the language and I took a group, over there. So it wasn't my first time. I did it through, it was an opportunity for me to take a group there and,
I love it.
And it was work, right? Because I was taking my clients and it wasn't just like it was a lot of fun and it was a lot of play but it was also tied in because like every morning we still did yoga and we still did reflection and we still did meditation and we did like self-care with each other. And the theme around that whole trip was about healing wounds around friendships and girlfriends. Because we all have stuff, right? Like we all have those stories of like being bullied or like being like kicked out of the group or like having a best friend that like betrays you or like whatever. And so part of the underlying purpose of that trip was we're going to go to Korea, we're going to have a bomb ass time, and we're going to also heal and do this work around like releasing our stuff around belonging and friendship and connection and meaningful relationships. So that was how I tied in the work with this like amazing, fun, epic trip. That was just, it was epic.
Okay, I'm gonna ask one more question then about that. So, what was the demographic or the the makeup of that group? Was it mostly Korean Americans or a wide range of white folks?
It was pretty diverse. So I would say, let's see, we had like I mean my community is very diverse in general. But I would say, I think like we had, let's see, we had somebody that was half Chinese and half white. We had, somebody who's Filipino, somebody who's Vietnamese, somebody who's white, somebody who's half Mexican and half white. Another one that was someone else she's mixed white, like East Africa, and we don't even know, like she got some Middle Eastern sprinkle up in there, So it was a pretty diverse, it was an amazing diverse group. Yeah. It was incredible.
That was crazy because that reminds me, I mean, this is a total tangent, but when I was in college, I went to China and the group was 25 people, it was 12 Asian Americans, different with Vietnamese, all that. 12 white kids and then me, like the so black man in China. I joked around, but I got up to 30 pictures of people taking pictures with me. But I purposely did that when I was at JMU. I went to the International Study Abroad Fair, and I went to the table that like everyone thought I was going to go to Africa or go to Ghana, and I was like, no, I'm going to go to China. And it was the greatest summer 2006. It was the greatest trip. I met some lifelong friends. Shout out to my boy Wayne too.
Love.
I just thought about that because for a lot of the students that went on that trip, particularly the Asian American students, it was a coming home. They were first generation American, but they want to just see that they'd never been even home, but they saw just where their background's from. There was a bunch of, obviously the white students just wanted to be exposed to something different. And then there was me, just a random dude that wanted to go. Like it was like,
I love that.
Why not? So I definitely love that that you did bring that up, that your trips in regards to healing also was exposure to something totally different. I think for me, and I'll speak just for myself, China was totally different than anything I've ever experienced.
Mm.
And it's a different worldview and all that. And I thought that was great. So I definitely encourage anyone. I think if I had $1 million, I think that would have been one of my things to do is travel globally, not just domestically, but travel globally, because it is really fun to
Oh, yeah.
do those things. I did a bathhouse, so random. I did get a massage, and it was like, this is so uncomfortable. We're all naked, and everyone is just so comfortable. This is crazy, like all that stuff. Well, we did the, drink soju and Chinese Tsinghua, was it Tsinghua beer
I
at like
love
3 in the
it.
morning. So those are all experiences that will be ingrained in my brain
Oh,
forever. So
that's
I definitely felt that. I was even picturing some of the stuff you said. I was like, yo,
totally.
those are really fun.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. It's so fun. So fun.
Well, I'm really glad we did this. I'm glad, as I said earlier before offline, I'm glad that you were persistent to being on the show. And this is one of those times where I'm like, I'm so glad, I'm so grateful that we connected. I think I learned some things, I took some notes. And I definitely think that this was definitely a great time. I'm really excited for this to be released. So before we get off, this is the part of the show I call shout outs and plugs.
Mm.
So shout outs means show love to anyone you want to show love to. And then plugs, I'll be writing them down. Anything you want to plug, social media handles, things you're working on, I will make sure to write it down and put it in the show notes so that anyone that listens to this episode can follow up with you. So the stage is set. I'll be quiet. Shout outs and plugs.
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, like shout out to all my clients. I mean, I honestly, like, they are my muse. They are, what literally keeps me alive and in my purpose, every day, because they're just the best. I just don't know how else to describe it. Like, they just light me up, and I call them my adult babies, and I'm like, oh, I just love all of you so much. Thank you. And so, shout out to all my clients for just being the best and amazing. And, you know, I know that they'll tune in and they'll listen, and they will always support, and, they just support each other, and they're just about it. They're just the best. So shout out to them. And also from there, as far as plugs go, the biggest, so I mentioned this earlier about, like, when you come and work with me, you're coming into my community. So I have a 16-week transformation program. It's called The Breakthrough. And this is like my life's work in a 16-week program format. It's like the culmination of, like, everything that I've learned that is, like, just my heart and soul and magic is inside of this program. And it is so highly transformational. People come into this program for so many different reasons and come out with so many different gains, wins, results, from weight loss to reducing psoriasis to saving marriages to finding dream jobs and quitting jobs and just all of that. And so this is my baby. And, I would love to meet anybody that would be interested in stepping into that experience, obviously. So that is what I would plug. It's The Breakthrough, my 16-week program. It's my life-changing program, my life's work. And beyond that, I would say, holler at me anytime, like anywhere, like Instagram, Facebook, find me on the internet, my website, meetlillianso.com. You can find me there. You can find me on Instagram at meetlillianso. You can find links in there. I have a free group where I have tons of trainings and a mini course and amazing interviews and all of that. So I'm very, very highly engaged. I love connecting with my people, my folks, and anybody that wants to start that conversation. I'm always down for that. So I would say, hit me up, like shoot me a DM, like shoot me an email, lillian@meetlillianso.com. You can email me, you can DM me, you can widget me from my website. I mean, seriously, like, the door is open. All you got to do is just make that first move, because I don't know you exist. So that's it. That's it for shout outs and plugs for me.
So excellent. So for that 16-week program, just to make sure they'll be able to find that on the website.
So there isn't any information about the program itself on the website because there's an application process for it.
Perfect.
Yeah, great question. So you can apply to book a call with me, and then from there we can get into, having a conversation and then unpacking and seeing if you're a good fit and so forth.
Excellent. So I'll put all that communications, her website, and definitely the social media handles in the show notes. And then you can follow up with Lillian to take advantage of this program, which I think is great. I'm not in it, but I already know that I definitely am going to stay in touch and DM her about other stuff and just stay in communication because I already feel very uplifted from this conversation. So all the listeners, please check out Lillian's social media handles and her website. I mean, definitely good energy. I saw her YouTube videos and the videos she sent me to set up this episode, and there were some really powerful testimonials. I really agree, and I like the color and the hair. It was definitely a good vibe. So please, if you're listening to this episode, please check her out and just at least follow her and get some good energy on social media. We all need that too, especially during this pandemic. We, taking in what you see and what you take in on your phone, at least make sure it's positive and it feeds you rather than sucks energy from you. Listeners, this is where to find me is Positive Philter on all things, positivefilter.com. And if you have a question or voicemail you want to leave for the podcast, it's 571-336-6560. That's 571-336-6560. Positivity is a movement. Keep doing what you got to do, and we're out.
Peace.
Thank you for listening to Positive Filter, a podcast that focuses on family, friends, career, with a little self-help along the way. If you enjoyed this podcast, please share it with your family and friends, and like the Facebook page, Spreading Positivity a Movement. Thanks for listening.